the photo I was meant to frame. The night I realized the photograph wasn't about light but permission, the gallery smelled like varnish and rain. I was there after hours because I had the keys, and because work feels honest when the city is asleep. My name is Leon. I frame pictures for a living, paintings, prints, posters, the occasional child's drawing that matters more than a museum piece. I tell clients I make borders. The truth is I measure what people want to keep and decide how close the world can come to touching it. This story begins with a woman and a man, but not the kind that fit easily into a frame. The woman is Maya, a photographer whose work makes strangers feel like they've remembered something intimate. The man is Roman, an investor and a collector, and on Tuesdays our gallery's patron saint. He funds openings, drinks good whiskey, and treats art like a mirror that promises better angles. I had met him often enough to dislike how he thanked people. You could feel his eyes measuring how much the thanks cost. Maya brought in a series called Private Weather, black and white interiors, faces turned away, hands on doorframes like they were reading Braille. I loved them immediately because they looked like rooms I'd been in without being invited. She stood beside me while I laid out archival mats and asked, "Do you ever look too closely at other people's lives?" I said, "All the time. Otherwise, I'd have to look at mine." She smiled in a way that made it feel safe to be honest, and I saw the thin silver chain at her throat, a tiny charm shaped like a crescent. Later, I'd learn it opened. Roman also loved the series, though his love sounded like a transaction. He bought 3 prints before the opening, then asked if Maya would attend a private dinner in the back office, just a few guests, just to talk about the work. She glanced at me like I could be a compass. I said the words professionals say. It could be good for exposure, and hated myself for sounding like the internet. She nodded and said yes. When she left, the room felt colder. I told myself I was protective of the art. I told myself a lot of things that week. The intrigue arrived the way weather does, quietly, then all at once. While building the shadow box for a centerpiece print, I found an extra negative slipped into Maya's portfolio sleeve, a twin that wasn't a twin, frame 12 bordering frame 13. The image was a bedroom with a single window like an eye. On the bed, a woman's legs crossed at the ankle, the rest of her body just out of frame. On the nightstand, a whiskey glass I recognized, the same cut crystal Roman liked at the gallery. In the mirror on the closet door, a sliver of a man's shoulder and a wrist with a watch I knew because I had watched that watch arrive before he did. I told myself it was a coincidence. Then I noticed the necklace on the nightstand, a silver crescent open, a secret hinge. I should have put the negative back and minded my border. Instead, I developed it. The darkroom makes people bold. You can blame the chemicals later. As the image floated up out of the tray, I felt the floor under me tilt. It wasn't just the whiskey glass that made the room familiar. It was the print tacked to the wall above the bed, one of mine. I had framed it 3 months earlier for Roman, a photograph of a fogged-up window with the words "Stay" traced in the condensation. My hands trembled once, and then decided shaking was a luxury. At the private dinner, the gallery transformed into a myth of intimacy. The lights dimmed. The projector hummed. Roman told a story about how art saved him from the boredom of money. Maya spoke in precise, careful sentences about consent, how the camera only took what it was given. I poured wine and practiced being furniture. When the plates were cleared, Roman said, "There's one more piece I want to show," and nodded at me like I was a stagehand. He had sent me the file 2 hours earlier with a message. "Tonight, don't label it, let her talk first." The image that filled the wall was from Maya's series. A half-open door, a pair of men's shoes on a rug, a woman's hand on a banister. But it had a wrongness, an angle too exact, a shadow that knew it was being watched. Maya leaned forward. Her face didn't move much, but the color left it like a decision. "That isn't mine," she said. Roman smiled at the guests as if a prearranged twist had landed. "It's an homage," he said, "a collaboration. The artist prefers to remain anonymous." "That's not what collaboration means," she said, voice soft enough to cut. He lifted his glass. "You inspired it." Then he changed the image with a click. There was the bedroom with the window and the whiskey. He had the negative I thought I'd found first. He had more, a sequence that moved closer without moving at all, a series of almosts. He stopped before it became explicit, YouTube safe, as if he knew the limits of my tolerance and our insurance. The guests whispered like paper. Maya's hand went to her throat. The crescent lay against her skin and didn't open. I waited for her to say lawsuit or theft or how did you get that. She said none of those. She said, "Turn it off," and Roman, to his credit or his ego, did. The guests told themselves they had witnessed art and left pleased to be part of a story that would later be credits on a memory. After, Maya stayed in the back office with the door closed. Roman walked out to the street where his driver waited and lit a cigarette he didn't smoke, then crushed it like the habit was theatrical. On his way past me, he said, "Some images belong to everyone," as if stating a law. I gave Maya time and then knocked. She didn't answer. I opened the door and found her sitting on the floor with her back to the filing cabinet, the chain in her hand, the crescent open. Inside was a micro SD card. She looked at me like I might be the question or the answer. "He has copies," she said flatly. "He doesn't have the first ones." "Who took them?" I asked. "I did," she said. "And if you can't forgive me for that, then forgive me for telling you now." It's the sick feeling of learning the painting you love was done with stolen paint. It's also the relief of hearing the truth while you can still choose what to do with it. "Roman?" I asked, trying to make the name mean more than a man. She shook her head. "Not at first. At first it was someone I thought would stay. He didn't. I made art out of the leaving. Then Roman understood the currency and tried to exchange it." "Does he have you?" "He has what looks like me," she said. "He doesn't have the night, that's mine." I wanted to be righteous. Instead, I was practical. "We can make his copies worthless," I said. "We can frame a new story and hang it in front of the old one." "What would you charge me?" she asked. "Everything," I said, "or nothing, I haven't decided." We began with the map. Roman kept his trophies on a home server he thought was clever because it hummed behind a wall-size photograph of the sea. I knew because he had once bragged, drunkenly, about living inside his collection. I also knew his installer because I framed the installer's wedding photos. People forget how small a city becomes when you handle their keepsakes. The installer owed me for rushing a job. He owed Roman for unpaid hours. He picked who to betray with the shrug of a man who doesn't believe in loyalty as much as inertia. He gave me a night and a code. Maya and I became conspirators the way people become lovers, with caution, then speed. We met in my workshop where sawdust softened the world, plotting in whispers we didn't need because no one was there to overhear us. We drew diagrams of Roman's house from memory and from the installer's notes. We found the camera that watched the hallway and noticed it watched badly. We learned the code to disarm the rack and practiced entering it in the air like children learning to write their names. We did not kiss. We stood close enough that the pauses hushed the room. The night we went in, the city shrugged off a storm. Roman was at a charity gala practicing generosity. I parked 2 blocks away and walked with my heart pretending to be a drum. Maya wore black that didn't apologize. She slid a bobby pin into the side gate's lock and breathed out. My mouth filled with the taste of fear and something sweeter. "Are we criminals?" I whispered. "We're editors," she said. "We're revising." The server hummed behind the sea. The code worked like truth does when no one is listening, unremarkable, precise. Maya's hands didn't shake. Mine did and learned quickly to stop. She found the folder structure like someone recognizing a friend's handwriting. Inside were images sorted by date and by the words private weather, like a man complimenting himself with another person's mouth. We didn't delete, we diluted. We replaced the files with the same file names but different pictures. Clouds, streets, a cat on a windowsill with a stare that felt like judgment. For the ones with people's faces, we used blurred versions Maya had prepared, edges smeared to anonymity, the heat traded for a temperature no one could charge for. We left the originals exactly where Roman couldn't reach them, a safe deposit box across town under Maya's legal name, with a letter that made sense only if you knew when to read it. On the way out, I stopped by Roman's bookshelf and turned the framed stay so it faced the wall. Petty, satisfying. He called me the next afternoon with a voice like a knuckle-rapping glass. "My server has a virus," he said. "Can you recommend someone?" "I frame pictures," I said mildly. "I can recommend a carpenter." "You were always quaint," he said. "Tell our Maya that homage is a compliment and that I'm done complimenting." "I'll tell her we prefer weather with windows," I said. He hung up as if that counted as winning. Maya came by that evening. The gallery was closed, the city loud in a friendly way. We stood in front of her work and let our reflections layer over it. "He'll find another way," she said. "He will," I said, "but not with your nights." She took the chain off her neck and set the crescent in my palm. "Keep it," she said. "If I'm tempted to use it again, I want the temptation to be inconvenient." We walked to the river, the kind of walk that doesn't end with a decision so much as a landing. On the pedestrian bridge, rain started that polite drizzle that asks forgiveness while falling. She took my hand, not a stealing, a placing. I thought of Anna, who had left me a year earlier with a note under my coffee. "You keep boarders so well you forgot to let me in." I thought of how I had told myself the next time would be different without building the door. I looked at Maya and felt the shape of a door I could at least knock on. "Tell me the part I won't like," I said. She considered. "I like taking those first photos," she said simply. "I like the control. I like turning a leaving into a composition. It was power and I was greedy. I can call it art and mean it, but I can also call it hunger and mean it more." "I can live with hunger," I said. "I can't live with theft." "Then let's feed it honestly," she said. We didn't kiss then. When we did, later at my workshop, the lights low, the room smelling like cedar and glue, it wasn't a storm. It was the warmth that happens when a hand finds a place it's been rehearsing in the air. Her mouth tasted like citrus and apology. We were careful the way people are when they want the second time more than the first. Clothes stayed on. Skin found the script under fabric. Her breath at my neck made a mark I wore the next day with a collar I didn't bother to button. YouTube would approve of our restraint. My heart didn't. Roman didn't sue. He made noise and then money somewhere else. He stopped coming on Tuesdays, which made the week exhale. The gallery opened Maya's show to a small crowd and a decent review, the kind that uses the word unflinching to mean I flinched and liked it. A woman cried in front of the print with the half-open door. A man asked if any images came in color. I sold 2 pieces and 1 promise. 3 weeks later, Roman's driver appeared at my workshop with a box. Inside was the stay photograph I had turned to the wall. He wanted it reframed, the driver said, for humidity. The note in the box was short. "Borders matter, Leon. Choose them carefully." I set the photo on my bench and ran my thumb along the glass. The condensation letters were smudged now, the word more suggestion than command. I replaced the mat with a deeper bevel and used UV glass and gave it back with a bill that was higher than polite. He paid without comment. That's another kind of victory. Maya and I learned the choreography of each other's quiet. She kept her chain empty, as a reminder that secrets are containers you can choose not to fill. I stored the microSD card in my safe with the label, "Do not open unless the weather changes." Sometimes, at night, she would press her palm to my chest and ask, "Still there?" And I would say, "Still," and feel a small, grateful weight under my ribs. We didn't fix the world. We changed one room in it. Maybe that's the same sometimes. I still measure frames for people who want everything to last and quietly know it won't. When I hold a piece between my hands and decide the distance between edge and image, I think about how far you can step towards something without falling in. I think about invitations disguised as accidents. I think about a woman who taught me that the difference between proof and permission is a crescent that doesn't have to open. On the night the show closed, we stood in the empty gallery and let the white walls feel big. The city outside was noisy with someone else's intrigue. Maya rested her head on my shoulder and said, "Do you ever miss the person you thought you were before you knew better?" I said, "Sometimes. Then I remember he was lonely." She laughed, soft and scandalous, and it warmed the dark. I locked up. We walked out. The rain had decided to stop. Somewhere a window fogged and someone wrote a word with their finger and wiped it away before anyone could read it. I didn't need to. I had the message already. Some photos are meant to be framed. Some are meant to be burned. And some, rare necessary, are meant to stay unprinted in the dark. A private weather system that keeps you honest by forcing you to ask, before you turn on the light, who is allowed to look.